Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 16 of the NFL season and to power rankings for that week. There was movement all across the board due to every team being in action. So, before we dive right into it, I want to quickly say subscribe if you're new, it's greatly appreciated, and leave a like and comment down below your rankings. So, quickly, the honorable mentions there are four this week. Beginning with the Los Angeles Rams, it was an ugly win on the road on Thursday Night Football against a divisional foe, but they got the win nonetheless. And even with the minimal scoring that took place in that game, Kyron Williams still had a great day with 180 yards rushing, and Puka Nacua had a great game receiving with 97 yards receiving. So the Rams offense definitely did play well, and the defense for sure played phenomenally, but it just didn't translate to the scoreboard, and that can happen at times. But I don't think there's anything really to worry about. They're now a game back of the Seattle Seahawks, so they were definitely a team to look out for in the NFC West. Speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, they are the next honorable mention. It wasn't a great game with the margin of error for that division being so minimal right now. You definitely wanted a better showing, but it was against the Green Bay Packers, and the Seattle Seahawks was simply just outmatched. Were wearing their highlighter uniforms, which I am very back and forth on, but it's whatever. Sam Howell did come into play in this game, and his performance definitely made Seahawks fans much more appreciative of Geno Smith. But again, not a great game nonetheless. The Houston Texans are the next honorable mention. A win is a win, but that was definitely not a great win for them. It clinches the AFC South thanks to the Colts losing, but the offense looked very lackluster again in the second half, and the Dolphins were in this game till the very end for really no reason. 2 or 3 interceptions, and the big thing was the Texans had 10 points off turnovers, which is what won them this game as they won by 8. So yeah, definitely need to see more by Houston, especially come playoff time. But for now, they're playing just fine. Win the division back-to-back years. They're feeling all right, I guess. The final honorable mention is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was another good win for Tampa to remain in first place of the NFC South, as their margin for error in that division is very minimal. And they handled the Chargers very well. Baker Mayfield threw for 288 and 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irvin and Rashard White had a 117 and 64 yards respectively on the ground. And the defense also played phenomenally, holding that Chargers ground game to 32 yards total. And Herbert threw pretty decently. It was 195 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So when they forced Herbert to throw the ball, he did well, but the team as a whole didn't perform how they might have wanted it to. So the Buccaneers are the final honorable mention. Number 10 is the Baltimore Ravens, and they were coming off of their bye this week, and they had an easy task of traveling to MetLife Stadium, and they succeeded with flying colors. Lamar Jackson had himself one hell of a day, throwing for 5 touchdowns while only having 4 incompletions, with a ground game that was working really well, with both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson having over 60 yards rushing on the day. The defense played well also. The New York ground game was held to 55 yards total. The passing game split between Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle only combined it for 191 yards with a touchdown and an interception, with Tim Boyle having the bulk of all of those. And just the Ravens are another team that come playoff time, no one's really going to want to play them. They're a sneakily good team who the record is definitely a lot worse than the actual team play as it feels. The only issue is just they need to be able to play a complete stretch of games to the high level, and they still have to play the Steelers once more on Saturday. So a short week there. Going to be interesting to see how that goes. As again, the Ravens alongside the Texans, the Steelers, and the Chiefs are all teams that are about to be playing some really quick turnaround games. So how does Baltimore respond to it? We'll see. For now, they come in at number 10. Number 9 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was a tough loss for them in Philly, but the team offensively just didn't show up and didn't do enough that they needed to for that game. Both through the air and on the ground, it was underperformance play from what was needed to win a game like this. And you look at the second half drives, the defense as well just could not get off the field. The Eagles had multiple 15-plus play drives, and their final drive of the game was a 21-yard drive. It was really a mess, and it really goes to TJ Watt getting injured in this game. He claims it was just a rolled ankle and he'll be fine. But as of right now, we don't know the full status. And again, the Steelers are going to have back-to-back relatively short weeks to play. So we'll see how much action he actually gets. They have a big one against Baltimore coming up, so again, we'll see. But in that game, TJ Watt did play well, a forced fumble and 2 sacks. He was really the main guy who showed up for this defense and for this team in general. But the Steelers weren't really expected to win that game, I would say. It was a rough showing for sure, and the second half wasn't great, but for the most part, the first half and early parts of this game, they were playing well, they were playing close. They just need to play a full 60 next time they meet. But for now, Steelers going to fall a little bit. They come in at number 9. Number 8 is the Washington Commanders, and they were coming off of a bye as well, and they had to travel to New Orleans in what was a really solid showing against the Saints in a game that was made closer than it should have been due to the refs and the whole clock thing at the end. But whatever, again, part of playing football is you also need to play against the officiating, and the Commanders did their part in that just fine. Jaden Daniels played well, throwing for 226 and 2 touchdowns. Both of the touchdowns going to Terry McLaurin, who finally is having like a real breakout game. I know he's had a few other good games earlier this season, but it's kind of just been a case of waiting for him to have like that, to really showcase that connection with Daniels, and he definitely did it in this one. And the ground game worked well also. Both Daniels and Brian Robinson had 65 plus yards, and again, playing well. The defense picked off Jake Haener, and after only 10 passes, Haener was replaced by Spencer Rattler, and that's when we saw the Saints offense playing a little bit better, but the defense played well. Rattler gave him the chance late. Commanders held strong, and they won 20-19. But again, that closeness of the final score, I feel like doesn't fully showcase the difference between these two teams and how much better Washington was in this game. But that's the nature of the NFL. Sometimes you can be playing great, and the game just does not fall your way in other aspects. Commanders come in at number 8. Number 7 is the Denver Broncos, another team coming off of their bye. And for what it was worth, this was not a good offensive game by Denver, all things considered. And yes, I know Bo Nix threw for 3 touchdowns, but at the same time, he had 130 passing yards and 3 interceptions. It just wasn't a great game. The running attack for Denver could not get anything going. Bo Nix was the leading rusher with 23 yards on the day. Still, I would have liked to see more, especially from that Denver ground game against the Colts ground defense, who isn't a great ground defense, but whatever. Mainly because the defense played so well, picking off Anthony Richardson twice, and Nick Bonito having that what is considered a scoop and score, but it's more so in pick 6 on that Adonai Mitchell trick play that they tried. But Nick Bonito has been playing phenomenally well for Denver this season. Definitely a sneakily great defensive player who should be in more defensive player of the year talks, even though he doesn't really have a real shot at winning it. Not because he isn't playing great, but just because that reward is going to go to more so the edge rushers who are getting a lot of stacks, like the TJ Watts and the Myles Garretts. So there's that. But still, I really like how the defense played. Would have liked to see them stop Jonathan Taylor a bit better. Had he given up 107 yards on the day to him isn't great. Would have given up a touchdown to him if he didn't fumble out the back of the end zone. And that fumble is definitely is probably what lost Indianapolis this game. Nonetheless, Denver played well. They have a short week coming up, and it was going to be an interesting game against the Chargers for that division and for a playoff spot. So we'll see. I know KC already won the division, but it's still going to be a big-time game. Nonetheless, the Broncos come in at number 7. Number 6 is the Green Bay Packers, the youngest team in the league. Continues to show how much of a threat they're going to be for years to come. Jordan Love played really well, throwing for 229 and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs continues to be one of the best signings of this past offseason. He had 94 yards and a touchdown on the day for this one. And the defense played well also, picked off both Geno Smith and Sam Howell, holding both of them to a combined 173 yards passing, and the defense kept Zach Charbonnet to 54 yards on the ground. Overall, just a really dominant showing for the Packers against the Seahawks team who in games past have definitely been kind of a boogeyman for them, from the NFC Championship game in 2015 to the Hail Mary to a bunch of other games. It's just a really weird rivalry that the Packers and Seahawks have. So it's good to see the Packers get this one. And definitely keep an eye out come playoff time for the Green Bay Packers. They're going to be no joke and definitely could make some splashes. Number 5 is the Minnesota Vikings, and that is a big time win for them to now sit tied for the first place spot in the NFC North with the Detroit Lions. And it was a game where Sam Darnold played well enough. He had 231 yards and a touchdown on the day. But the main impact for this offense was Aaron Jones, who is continuing to be another good signing for them. He had 86 yards on the day with a touchdown, playing well. And the defense stepped up against a mediocre and bad Chicago Bears team, with shutting out Chicago in the first half and forcing Chicago to go 1 for 12 on third down. That is a crazy stat line, but it goes to show just how good this Minnesota defense is, and the fact that Kevin O'Connell is going to deserve to be in Coach of the Year talks. We'll see if he actually ends up winning it, and I wouldn't be shocked if Brian Flores gets a few interviews at the very least for head coaching openings in the offseason. But I do like how Minnesota's playing. Again, they're right sitting on top of the NFC North now, tied with the Lions, a spot that no one thought they were going to be in this season. They have surprised many, so they come in at number 5. Number 4 is the Detroit Lions, and it sucks to see an effort like that one that Jared Goff had go to waste, as he played phenomenally well with 5 touchdowns on the day. But it's just the injuries are starting to pile up, especially for this Lions defense, who could not stop a fly in this game. And that was part of the reason why Dan Campbell made this decision. Quickly to talk about that, I understand why people don't find a lot of sense in that onside kick decision because of the amount of time left and the amount of points that were down in that game. But again, when you take into the account that the Lions defense was not playing well that day, they were banged up with injuries, and they really couldn't fully afford to give Josh Allen the ball back at that point. Yeah, it makes sense that they would do it, even though I don't fully agree on doing it, but I do understand the reasoning behind it. The main thing is that David Montgomery is probably going to be out for the season, and that is going to massively hurt this running game. For as much as I like Jahmyr Gibbs, the whole point of the Lions is that they are a 2-back team. David Montgomery being Knuckles, and Jahmyr Gibbs being Sonic. They are that dynamic duo. So David Montgomery being out is going to hurt this team. This was a Lions team that 100% could have made a big time splash and a big time run this year, but injuries are coming in and trying to negate it. But we'll end up seeing if this Lions team can bounce back and if this Lions team can be resilient and play through all these injuries still at the high level. We'll see, but for now they come in at number 4. Number 3 is the Kansas City Chiefs, and they got the win against Cleveland, and Mahomes threw the ball pretty well, but the issue is Mahomes didn't finish that game due to an ankle injury that we don't fully know the status of at the time of this recording. So we'll see. I do expect him to be back. I don't think it'll be anything too severe. And we saw 2 years ago during the first part of this potential 3P that Mahomes can play through a high ankle sprain if needed. But I wouldn't be shocked if they give him some time to rest, as KC does have a 2-game lead over Buffalo for the number 1 seed. So in theory, they can afford to lose a game. And even when Carson Wentz came in, he went 2 for 2 passing and threw the ball pretty well. So we'll see. The benefits is also that the ground game worked really well for Kansas City. They had a total of 132 yards on the day, with Xavier Worthy having a touchdown and about 30 yards. The defense also played really well, forcing 4 interceptions, 3 of them to Jameis Winston, and then getting 1 off of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Jerome Ford had that one big breakaway run, but for the most part, the defense still played the ground very well. And I do like KC. I do think that they're going to get the 1 seed, even though they don't fully need the 1 seed. We saw last year that as long as they just get into the playoffs, they're going to be a threat of a team to play against. So I do really like Kansas City going forward, even with Mahomes potentially missing a game or so. Again, we'll fully see. We don't know the full status because it's all kind of just random thinking and thought process about the future of Kansas City. So they're going to come in at number 3. Number 2 is the Philadelphia Eagles, and that defense played really well for Philly in this one against the in-state rivals. They held Russell Wilson to 128 yards through the air, and the Steelers team as a whole to only 56 yards rushing. Jalen Hurts played really well, and what was a lot of talk about this passing game entering this game, Hurts had 290 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day, one going to A.J. Brown, one going to Devonta Smith. And Saquon Barkley ended up rushing for 65 yards, which is a good game for most other running backs. Saquon Barkley definitely seems like an underperforming one, but it is still, again, 65 yards is still a really solid day for a running back to have. Again, most of the talk entering this game was about the passing game, and they stepped up to the plate and played well against a really good defense. And again, the talk more so should be on their second half drives. Again, all of them 15 plus yards, all of them killed so much clock, and they didn't let the Steelers get the ball back pretty much at all in that fourth quarter. They got the ball with about 10 and a half minutes left, and they ran a 21 play drive to put the nail in the coffin. It was really impressive. I like Philly going forward, especially with seeing how badly the injuries for Detroit can be against other really good teams. Everything will be determined come playoff time, but for now, the Eagles sit at number 2. And at number 1, the first time we have a new number 1 in quite a while on these power rankings, it is none other than the Buffalo Bills. You take down the top dog in the NFL, it's going to come with some rewards, including another MVP type performance for Josh Allen. And if he didn't clinch it with his game against the Rams, he probably 100% clinched the MVP with this win against the Lions. A 4-touchdown day, 2 through the air, 2 on the ground, with 262 passing yards to boot. It was, again, a great performance by Josh Allen. And James Cook also had a fantastic day. 100 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, playing really well. The defense didn't quite show up how I would have expected it, but it was against the Detroit Lions, who are a really good offense, so I'm not putting too much stake into it still. But the main issue was, they gave up nearly 500 passing yards to Jared Goff and 5 touchdowns, which isn't great, but they played the ground well. Jahmyr Gibbs only had 31 yards on the day. So it's a weird kind of like the defense played half the game well, but for the most part, you still kind of are just like they're missing something to really be that great defense that I know the Bills can have. So it's something to keep an eye on come playoff time, but still, for the most part, I like what I'm seeing out of the Bills. They're going to come in at number 1. All right, there you have it. Quick little rundown. 10 Baltimore Ravens, 9 Pittsburgh Steelers, 8 Washington Commanders, 7 Denver Broncos, 6 Green Bay Packers, 5 Minnesota Vikings, 4 the Detroit Lions, 3 the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 the Philadelphia Eagles, and number 1 is the Buffalo Bills. Thank you all for tuning in. Subscribe if you're new, leave a like, comment down below, you know the whole YouTube spiel, and I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.